welcome to another Tipping Points, and I'm Barry Dennis, your host, along with my co-host over here to my left,
John McKeon,
and on my right,
Christy Clausen.
And our mission is to
seek truth,
spread love.
So some amazing things have happened just yesterday. I think it was announced some really exciting progress in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, to be very specific. That for the first time in history of Saudi Arabia, women will be given the right to drive a car. So, how do you feel when you hear that? I mean,
it's crazy to me. To be honest with you, shocked, because I didn't even know that existed in the world today. Honestly, I didn't know that in any country that women were not allowed to drive cars.
Well, and just imagine this. Saudi Arabia, there's three countries, at least three countries in the world, where women have less rights than Saudi Arabia.
if you can believe that.
Yeah, Syria, Pakistan, and Yemen are three of the countries that have less rights than in Saudi Arabia. So my feeling when I heard it was excitement, because it's amazing progress. But then on the other hand, I too, although I knew it, it wasn't new information to me, I was really excited. And then I thought to myself, what a strange thing to be excited about.
Yeah, right.
Well, what about the unintended consequences? So just because the government suddenly allows women to drive, what about the people who are more conservative in the community that see this happening and don't like the change?
Well, no, there's a ton of that going on.
Yeah.
In fact, I read today that one of the religious leaders actually said his opinion is that this will be the detriment, this will hurt women. But of course, there's been a women's movement there. Now, I was recently speaking to a woman, and I'm going to tell this story just to talk about the perception often of people. I was talking to a woman, and I mentioned the fact that women aren't allowed to drive, and for example, in Saudi Arabia and many countries, they have a thing called guardianship,
Right.
where a woman is not allowed to do anything without the permission of a man. And I was saying how appalled I was by this, and she said her opinion was, it's just their culture, don't be judgmental. It's okay, they like it. She actually said, no, they like it. I said, no. Don't you understand there's a whole women's movement in the Middle East that is crying out for equal rights. And she was like, huh? She was coming from this paradigm of political correctness, which is what it was. Rather than saying it's terrible, she couldn't even think it because of political correctness. She just said, no, don't say that they like it that way. And I said, no, they don't. The women are crying out for equality. In fact, we're going to put on our screen a movement called globalfundforwomen.org. And this is how we can help. Globalfundforwomen.org is a movement and a way that we can reach out to Middle East and Africa, where women are incredibly oppressed by their cultures and by their religions, that we can make a difference. So this woman that I was speaking to had no idea that the women are screaming and for equal rights. Now, of course, there are many women, yes there are, who will say, if you're speaking to them, especially if there's a man around, that they like it that way. And of course, there are some women who do like it that way.
Right.
And I would simply argue they've been culturalized into it, they don't know another way, and they just simply say they like it that way. But the overall majority they're basically, they feel imprisoned by their own culture. And so, to come back around, it is something to celebrate. It is a joyous moment.
It's a milestone, but isn't it true that women are segregated? So if I go into, for example, a restaurant.
Yes.
Am I sitting with the men, or am I segregated into a separate family area?
You can't sit with the men, not in Saudi Arabia.
So are we moving, is the bar moving there? Or are we still in a situation where they're still oppressed? But now they can drive to the segregated room.
No, they're extremely oppressed because, okay, so they have they're getting the right to drive, but guardianship, okay, guardianship is still the rule of the land. So guardianship is basically the idea that all women must get the permission of the men in their life to do almost everything. So they can't get in their car.
Without permission from the male passenger.
Yeah, I mean they can drive, but they can't go somewhere
Right.
without the permission of their guardian. They can't travel. They can't get a job.
Well, they're not allowed out of the house.
Even oftentimes out of the house. Yes, I mean usually they're not allowed out of the house. But listen to this. Women in most places in Saudi, probably the whole country, but I know it's the general thing with the guardianship. They can't even get any type of health insurance without the permission of a guardian.
Mm.
They can't have health insurance.
You know, you could say that we were culturized into this freedom idea, but we weren't, because we just had this whole movement that's really young, actually, that has not been that long.
One
that we've been
generation
able-
or
right,
two generations.
exactly.
Yeah. So only your daughter
Exactly.
is probably one of the first generations that's growing up, not totally emancipated, but with most of the freedoms that any person would expect.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was going to just say that my daughter just got her driver's license.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was no
She's
question.
16.
But
No-
there was no
no-
question.
no
It was,
question.
in
Right.
fact, it was expected.
It was
Right.
expected.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're right. Historically, it wasn't long ago, but on the other hand, it feels like
Oh,
Forever.
like forever ago. Yeah.
forever ago. But that's something to be celebrated because it really shows how fast we are moving. Now, there's a practice, of course, that goes on in the Middle East and in Africa of female genital mutilation.
Oh.
And it's another part of this guardianship thing. And so, well, why is this practiced, Christy?
Well, from what I've read, it's a way to keep control, keep women without having desire, so that they are virgins when they get married, they're faithful after they're married, and then it gives the man more pleasure, apparently. I don't know.
That's what they say.
So I was.
No,
I don't understand any of
Yeah,
it.
Right.
No.
I'm not accepting
Yeah.
or understanding of any of it whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it makes absolutely no sense at all. Any of it. Okay, none of it makes sense.
No, none of it makes
Yeah.
sense. But
But
except
that part's a real big outlier,
Yeah,
is what you mean.
right.
Yeah.
except what makes sense though is the idea that they will be able to control the women. The idea is that they will take away the desire for any sexuality. Therefore, no women will ever have the desire to be with another man.
Okay.
I
So
feel
that-
And I know this
So
makes.
that's
So,
measurable
are you
for-
boiling over here? I mean,
Yeah.
let it out.
I'm completely boiling. I feel like that would be the complete opposite.
Why?
It would. I just because then.
Not
you,
that I just want to hear your opinion on it.
I mean, there's attraction and sexual desire as part of your relationship.
I know. Why would? Yes.
Well,
sorry.
I just don't understand why. It's just one. You have less to hang your hat on then.
Okay.
Is what I think in your relationship.
In your relationship, you're in.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
You have less, like, there's more focus on the stuff that you left your toothbrush out again or whatever. Or whatever the other things are. You know, there's you've omitted an entire piece of your relationship.
So what we would call normal. You ask your significant other if they would like to engage in some adult activities, and they might say no, or they might say enthusiastically yes, but they're not going to say whatever.
Right.
Yeah, and if you take away the desire, they're
Right.
never going to
Well,
want
it's
to.
going to be whatever.
Right.
But and so here we are sitting here trying to understand this, but basically, what it comes down to in a situation where a woman's been forced to have genital mutilation so that they have no sexual desire, basically then suddenly, in a sense, every sexual encounter is kind of like rape. Because she's never going to want to enjoy that or
Right,
be a part
why
of
would
it.
you consent when you have no participation?
There's no participation.
Yeah.
And the other side of it, what is so hard for us to get our minds around this way of thinking. But as a man, why would you ever want to have that experience with somebody who can't experience it with you?
Right.
Why would you not want to share wonderful, joyful experience that is sexuality. Why would you want to take it away from them and just simply I don't. It just none of it makes sense to me.
But it's not just the communities in the Middle East we're talking about. It's practiced throughout the world.
Mostly Middle East and Africa.
Right now,
Those are the two main
Africa,
places.
But so that's, I think you hit on the point, is that they're not looking at it from that standpoint of connection and
It's control
experience. It's
and-
control
and-
and submissiveness.
Submissiveness.
Okay.
We're talking about it in a sense. It's a kind of slavery
Okay.
of control.
Wow. I guess I would agree.
Yeah.
I wasn't really tracking down that road, but now that you mention it, when you think about it, it is kind of indentured.
It's absolutely. They can't leave. They
Right.
can't get health insurance. They can't get a job, and they're forced not. And of course, not. I don't want to say that all women have this there, but so many do, and it's not talked about. And it's in Africa. I've been in Africa. I've been in the Middle East. I learned about it the first time I was in. I think it was actually the first time because it actually happens in India too.
Mm.
And it was the first time that I traveled in Africa and in India that I learned about it. I was utterly. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't make any sense out of it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, again, we have the drum out. We celebrate the drum. We hit the drum. Here, hit the drum. Just get it. We celebrate today one step forward. One step forward.
It's a really good step, I think.
It's a great. It's
I mean,
ridiculous that we
it's
celebrate.
akin
But it's,
to women's education, girls' education. It's in that freedom.
It's a small step, but it's interesting how you've heard the fable about the camel's nose, right? You let the camel's nose into the tent, pretty soon you got a whole camel in the tent. So
No,
you allow
that's
people to
what-
drive.
Right.
absolutely.
And then the next day you allow them to go to school.
That's right. One step at a time.
Yeah, one step at a time.
Raising
Amen.
consciousness, that is the key. Yeah. Because once you have awareness, you can't go back. You can't unsee something.
Yeah.
You've already
okay.
seen it.
You can't unsee it. And these are strict. Saudi Arabia is an example of a place where they adhere to strict Islamic ideas and laws. And that's where these come from. And so it's the idea that they're now being able to drive, it's a part of unraveling the fundamental side of things that can begin to create a dialogue.
Yeah.
A dialogue that goes beyond sort of the fundamental adherence to ideas that just do not serve. And the idea that a woman, oh my gosh, this is one that's always blown my mind. In Saudi Arabia and many other countries, in a court of law, a woman's perspective, her opinion, is worth half that of a man's.
Well, that means it's worth nothing.
I agree. I mean, the idea that they actually say it's worth half, it really...
So you're the judge.
Yeah, right.
And Christy and I have a dispute. And we come before you, and I state my case, and Christy states her case, and she loses. Because she gets half a vote.
She's instantly
Instantly
loses.
loses.
How could she ever not?
Right.
To say it's worth half is like saying, it's like
It's
what
worth
you
nothing.
said, it's
Yeah.
worth nothing.
It's worth nothing.
It's this incredible reflection of the consciousness that women aren't as smart as men,
No.
or as good as men,
Or it's valuable.
or as valuable
Right.
as men.
Yeah.
You know, men and women. Look, let's face it. I'm thoroughly convinced that John, and you can agree with me or disagree with me, that if we didn't have women in our life,
Well,
I would be. I would be.
I would be dead.
Yeah, you'd be dead,
Without a doubt.
and I would be squalling in mud. I would just be like, what happened?
Yeah.
Where am I? You know what I mean? And that balance is what is needed, you know, and a woman's perspective and a woman's energy and a woman's power. You know, I've always felt that physically men are given strengths that are stronger than women physically, genetically, but there's a soul and a strength to a woman that I don't understand.
Honey, I'm going to go do this, and she'll go, and I'll go,
You're like, I
I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it that way.
There's a part of of us that are still stuck in a cave.
Yes, exactly.
And women are like going, come on,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
There's a nice little world out here you can be a part of. It's called Civil World.
Yes.
We talk about stuff.
Put the joystick down, come out of the man cave and talk
Yeah.
to your
Right,
friends.
right,
And
exactly.
I mean, and I, you know, of course, the cave has a great place for men, but to the women pull us out and help us see things differently. I just can't imagine a culture, you know, I mean, and we were just saying, of course, our own culture was that way 50, or, you know, the further back you go, the more it was. And it's so wonderful to live in a world with such equality now, where a woman, you know, that where we get to throw our ideas and shake them up together, and and have something
case in
better
point-
arise.
Case in point, we went to dinner last night, my wife and I. It would have been really lonely in Saudi Arabia because she'd have been over there with the kids and the women, and I would have been over here.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and what are those guys doing in that room in
Smoking
the
the
restaurant
hookah.
by
Well,
themselves?
I was gonna say
What
it's
are they
kind of
doing?
like those, you know, men's only cigar / bar rooms
Yes.
that still kind of exist. They
No,
still,
and that's
Yeah.
okay. I mean,
But
it's
that's what
okay
they're
because
doing.
women have their women groups
Right,
and men
right.
have their men group. That's fine. That's all good and healthy. But just to have restaurants segregated that way,
Yeah.
Right.
to have places, and you know what I mean. It's like just
maybe the women are over there going, I have some space right now.
I would
no, they have to take care of the
That's-
children
Well,
at the restaurant.
Right.
That's what they have to do.
But I think that's a good point, Christy, in that we're looking at it from with Western eyes,
right.
and and so it's almost impossible for me to put myself into that mindset
Yeah.
and understand how they might feel comfortable being segregated and
Well,
not
yes.
having those
Maybe they're-
cavemen to deal
yeah.
with.
Those cavemen.
Yeah.
Well, but the point is, the men can be with the women. Absolutely. It's not a women over here and men over here. It's called the family space.
Right.
Okay? So all the men, the women, and the children come to the family space. They have a men's only.
Okay.
That's how it is.
Okay.
And they have a separate door for women, not the front door. It's a side door.
So even if I'm going to join my family in the family space, my wife can't walk through the door with me. She has to go around the back.
Sometimes and oftentimes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, in the family space, all are welcome, all can play. So the man can come out and be a part of it, but if the children get on his nerves, he can just go be with the men for a while. I'm moving to Saudi
Wait a
Arabia.
minute.
I don't know. I mean, it's really hard not to see through Western eyes
Mhm.
because I'm a doctor and I
Oh my
couldn't
God.
imagine not having that opportunity. I mean, I graduated 20 years ago, and 20 years ago, it was 50% female.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Even 20 years ago.
Yes. So
And now it's
nobody calculated
now
my
it's
age
swung
based
the other
on
way.
that.
I mean, more
Yeah.
women are graduating from college,
Yeah.
more women are becoming doctors,
Right.
everything.
So I mean, it's really difficult to take out my viewpoint because I can't imagine having these restrictions in my life.
Right.
And the world's a better place because you're a doctor.
Well, I hope so. Thank you.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, think about it. You know, in so many ways, the world's a better place because you're a doctor. And of course, when I'm saying you, I
You
mean
mean
you, Christy.
collectively,
Well, I
right.
mean
Yeah.
you personally, but also collectively.
Right. Exactly. That's what I understand.
Yeah, women are have a soft touch, and when you're, you know, generally speaking, and when I'm going in and I'm seeing a doctor, I love having a woman for a doctor. I
It's
really
interesting
do.
that you
Right.
mention that because my optometrist, my dentist, and my general practitioner are all women.
Yeah, and
Because-
isn't it good? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, it's I think it's just I don't know. I don't want to be sexist, but I do believe that women are more nurturing, just in
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They are.
Caregiving,
men.
natural.
And so
It's just
I feel that when
natural.
I'm sitting down with a person who's talking to me about my health, that I feel that a natural caring that I don't get from a man.
Yeah, I do too. I feel that way too.
So in the countries that are practicing this type of segregation and are oppressing women, they're really missing out.
They're completely missing out, and it's not to say, of course, that a man's abilities don't have a place. Of course, as a doctor, there's great doctors,
Sure,
there's great
sure.
surgeons, all the thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, of course. But women bring, it's just that thing of bringing it in. They bring this wonderful softness to a world that was so hard and rigid.
So if you're in Saudi Arabia, you don't have that.
No, you don't.
That's not an experience, right? You don't.
No, it's-
you don't even know what that's like.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
it's coming where if this video ever makes it there, isn't censored, of course,
Oh, of course.
it would be.
Yeah.
But if it would ever, arrive, then we're pulling for you, for sure. We're pulling for all women, we're pulling for all men, we're pulling for humanity.
And so for the women of Saudi Arabia, I'd just like to say, baby, you can drive my car.
Near, 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 near. Yes, you're gonna be a star, cause we love you.
That's right.
Do, 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 yeah. Sheikh Salah al-Luhaydin said this: physiological science and functional medicine found that driving, automatically affects ovaries and rolls up the pelvis. What is that even? Okay, so this is one of the reasons why they wouldn't allow women to drive in Saudi Arabia. But you know, we all have areas of our lives where we may not be thinking clearly. We all have areas of our lives where we may be thinking a little backwards, like this concept. So it's an opportunity for all of us right now to take a look at our lives and think, you know, where am I not thinking quite clearly? Where am I maybe thinking a little backwards? And begin to take some self-inventory and make some changes in thinking, which leads to changes in action. And that's what these tipping points are about. We talk about news and we look at the truth. We want to bring the truth because light upon something is the greatest disinfectant. And as we look at that truth, we can tip the scales toward love, toward equality, toward all those ideas that we hold dear in our hearts. So we hope you'll give us a thumbs up, that you'll subscribe and make a comment and become part of the conversation.